Chromancer is a great online card game. It's one of the first things coming out recently that has truly new mechanics that make you think outside of the box, especially if you're a card game player. It's something we're really excited about. We've actually spent 7 years designing this game, and it's been worth the wait. It's different from other card games in a number of ways, really to the extent that as a card game player, some of your instincts are probably going to make you lose the first few games of Chromancer you play. And that's a lot of fun for us because we're lifelong card game players, and it really makes us think outside of the box about how to play. In a nutshell, the type of strategy you use in this game is very different to other games because your target in the game is not the opponent. You're not trying to knock the opponent's hit points down to 0. What you're doing is almost indirectly trying to disable him from playing the game altogether. And the way that works very simply is, in this positional game, matters where you put things, you are going to decide where your deck goes, where your discard pile goes, and where your pool of resources go, those being the structures through which you play the game. And your opponent's going to do the same, and your goal in the game is to literally destroy those things. And as you disable and destroy those things, you completely destroy his ability to use them. So if I were to knock out my opponent's bank from the game, he'd no longer be able to save resources from turn to turn. If I knocked out his deck, he'd no longer be able to draw cards for the rest of the game. If I destroyed his discard pile, all of the cards that he'd used that were temporary, like a spell or so forth in a card game, would leave play forever. And of course, our card design enforces this concept and allows you to strategically build decks that let you adapt your strategy so that you're not necessarily going to lose the game just because you can't draw cards anymore. But when you play the game, the strategy is very much about figuring out quickly what your opponent's weak point is and disabling him correspondingly. It's actually a really easy game to learn how to play because it's quite straightforward. It's pretty logical. You have things that do what you'd expect. You have a structure that stays somewhere once you build it and does something generally forever. You have creatures that once you move them somewhere, once you play them, they can move around and they can attack things. So the interface of the game, that sort of the what am I doing, is pretty simple. Usually when we playtest, let someone playtest, we give them about a 5 to 10 minute explanation and tutorial, and then they're good to go. But the learning curve in terms of becoming an expert at the game is extremely vast and broad, partially because the mechanics are so new in what I was describing, and partially because it's a very open game where you can do a lot of different things at your own behest. To the extent that many good card game players have come and beaten me, the game designer, at the game in their playtest because I'm not necessarily an expert at all the different strategies myself. Well, I started developing this game 7 years ago. We sort of put the shoe on the other foot. We didn't start out as a game company with the intention of launching a game. We were card game players, and I started by, during my days as a card gamer, inventing my own game, perfecting it over the years, and eventually, through my friends who are my colleagues now, played the game with them and refined the game, and it was only when we got to the point that we felt the game design was good enough that we decided to launch the game now, 7 years later. Well, we're a small team. We started out as 5 people. Unlike most small teams, one of our people is a professional fantasy writer who ensures that the lore of our game lines up with all the game design and everything else. He does release short stories on our website from time to time. We're basically a small team that came together because we had all the competences that we need to launch this game, and who also happen to be lifelong card players. So we're live on Kickstarter right now. We're doing pretty well. We've raised a good amount of what we need. We need a bit more. We're actually kickstarting so that we can pay for the art and the UI that we want to stick into the game, so that it has a really great feel to it and it's easy to play, on top of all the great game mechanics and card design that we already have over the course of the time we've spent designing it. So we're still looking for support from the card gamers community. We're very keen on having a good back and forth with all of our players, and really rewarding people who are willing to come in and say, I'm going to play this game when it comes out. I'm basically going to purchase a product ahead of time and pledge. We're giving out fantastic Kickstarter rewards, which include things like signed art from some of our really fantastic artists.
Great. Well, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, really. Thanks for having me.